I think it is someone who has, I think, moved away from the Caribbean and has traveled, but he is kind of having that nostalgic feeling where he wants to go back. And the thing is, I don't know if he actually went back. That's why it is troublesome to me. You understand? Because I didn't get the feeling as if he actually went back to the Caribbean, or he was just thinking of when that time be when he would go back and all the things that would happen. But he's somebody who has been traveling, and he has traveled away from his homeland, and he was really thinking of all the things and the warmth and all the beauty of the homeland that the South did not have for him.
That's a question that I pondered on for a little while. Did he actually return, or did he recapture the island's bright beaches in a nostalgia sense? Is he just recalling? I think there's quite a bit of evidence to suggest that he did, in a literal sense, return home. But I want to see what other teachers think about the speaker's journey. Obviously, he left, he immigrated, probably spent 20, 30, 40 years abroad in the North. But did he actually return home, or is he just homesick? What are we seeing?
Well, I think there's a part where I'm not traveling river. I think he's saying that he will join you, but today I will join you traveling river. I was looking at that probably
what is the traveling river? Because the river is set in contrast to the sea, the ocean. In the South, we have the ocean, the Caribbean Sea, and there's more life, more openness, more richness. But up north, we have rivers. Rivers are saltless. I think even in other lines, we see saltless savannas in the second stanza. So there's this contrast between river and ocean, between the open natural beauty, the friendliness, and the kind of rigid infrastructural existence, the concrete jungle up north. So the river that he joined, is that in reference to him actually having moved to the north? He joined the traveling river, borne down the years of your patient. This stanza is quite complex. So he joined the traveling river. What is the traveling river? Can we answer that question? What is the traveling river that the speaker joined? Because this might give us a hint as to whether or not he actually returned home. All right, I'll give you my idea while we think of the traveling river. It's quite a tough stanza. I think from stanzas 3 and 4, the speaker has kind of left his journey of traveling to the north and back, and he's talking more about a general journey of, historically, the relationship between the north and south. This traveling river brings to mind, in a literal sense, you might say it's a stretch, but I see some diction that suggests, the Atlantic slave trade, that traveling along the river kind of movement. But also, it's as if this river is the passage of time. And, the patient is flowing, borne down the years. I'm seeing something more than just, I went to America and I came back. It's as if he's looking at the journey or the relationship between South and North. So he went to the traveling river. He joined them. And he mentioned past pains that would wreck us, sorrows arrest us. Past pains, sorrows. This is kind of looking to me like he's hinting at colonization, slavery, those aspects of the relationship between North and South. Hatred that washes us up on the flats and moving on through the plains that receive us. But then look at the last line of that stanza. Processioned in tumult, come to the sea. So eventually he returns home. So he joined the traveling river, but where did he end up? We see the procession in which it gives us that funeral, this long journey. And we see the tumult, so it was a hard journey. But he eventually came to the sea. He was led right back home. And then after that line, we see the bright waves. So apparently he went north, but his journey through life took him north, maybe to several countries, several cities, but he ended up, he washed back up ashore. And so we see the bright waves again. We see it's the same imagery that opened the poem. It's like now we're seeing the explanation of stanza 1 when he said he recaptured the island's beauty. He deviated from that. So stanza one is like, when you're watching a movie, you see a scene and then you see 6 months earlier, and then you go back to that 6 month period. So stanza one might be a flash forward, showing us that I did return home, but let's take a look at my journey. How did I end up here? And we looked at the journey to the up north. We see the slanting sleet and the savannas and the shadows. We see all of these things that are, metaphors for his experience up north. And there's so many meanings we could ascribe to these things. We can't even list out what these things could mean. But eventually, he comes to the sea. And then we see the bright waves. We see the fisherman greeting him. We see the starfish greeting him. We see nature accepting him and saying, yes, welcome home. You've been away for so long, but you're back. And we accept you. There's no resentment. There's no, you abandoned us. There is just welcome, welcome. So it's almost a message that even if you've been away for 30, 40 years, you can always come home. You will always be welcomed back. Anyway, that's my idea of what happened in terms of the speaker's journey. Do you have any other ideas? Did the speaker actually return home?
I think you've captured it pretty well, at least for me, because that was also somewhat kind of my vision into this poem. The idea of, it's somehow connected to slavery and therefore, the slaves being taken from one place to the next. How he gets back to his home, that would be the question, right? Like, because if we're talking about slavery here, I'm not very much a history person, so I don't know in terms of whether slaves were able to return back home, maybe unless if they ran away, unless if I don't know. So
well, Gian, where that is concerned, I think he mentioned this whole thing of slavery, colonization, not very directly, but he's just kind of deviating from his personal journey. So the slaves themselves didn't return home, I believe. He returned home, but it's almost like a homecoming for those slaves from long ago. So he mentioned, like that historic journey. And it's like his journey is a piece of this journey. His journey is almost, in a sense, a resolution of that entire journey, all that happened hundreds of years ago. It's like it's wrapped up in my journey of going abroad for 30 years and coming back home. So the returning home, I don't think it's relating to
the actual,
the slaves,
right,
if slaves are mentioned. But he's kind of mixing both the historic journey and his lifetime journey. I believe it's a complex poem, and there are so many right answers once we can find the diction.
I think what you said there makes sense. It's like it's a part of his own history, right? And so therefore he's kind of walking this journey that his ancestors had walked before. However, he was able to return home. Yeah, that makes sense.
When you look at it, the entire poem could parallel his immigration returning home and that historic journey as well. We see that the bright beaches, he's recapturing the island's bright beaches. Look at the word recapture. Diction is important there. Capturing, isn't that a very colonial sounding word? Capturing islands, capturing beaches. This is something that we would expect in a colonial poem, right? So he's recapturing. It's almost as if, these things happened to my ancestors. I'm going to fight back for them. I'm going to return home in their stead. So we could look at the poem in that deeper sense, of him recapturing the beaches. Since then, I have traveled, moved far from the beaches, moved far. It sounds like he was really pulled from the beaches, almost not on his own volition. Sojourned in stony cities, walking the lands. Look at how physically tiresome that journey sounds. He's walking the lands. It's almost as if he's walking thousands of miles, literally. Almost bringing to mind that physical labor, that the physical journey the slaves would have undergone in sharp, slanting sleet and the hail. He's not used to this kind of weather, this kind of treatment. He's out of place. He crossed the countless. What are the countless saltless savannas? Yeah, the countless savannas, these might just be the different cities or countries, the different situations he he has he had to face. You know, while he was up north, we see something of oppression. Maybe there's racism, the shadows oppressing him. So he really had a bad time up north. Maybe he had to move up north to seek a better life and whatnot, but he didn't really enjoy that experience the same way he could be comfortable, you know, at home. So when he returned home, he was, I think he actually returned home and he was so relieved when he reached home. Any more questions on South? This might be our last point for today. We're probably nearing 2 hours. Any other
I have a
ideas?
question, but it is really for clarity then.
Hmm.
So stanza 4, if it is like referring to the colonial era, is it that we're saying just like the river traveling, he himself has then make a conscious decision to forget all of these pain and move on?
It's the very opposite. I think it's the very opposite.
Okay.
I think he's saying, because he mentions the past pain, so he hasn't forgotten. That would wreck us, sorrows, arrest us. He hasn't forgotten the history. But it's like he's justifying his own traveling. So, all right, look at it this way. A person might leave to England or America, and others left back home might say, well, he has abandoned us, he has forgotten about us. It's like he's saying, I did move, mark you, I did move, I did go away, but it's not because I forgot. You know, put it this way, what they did to us. It's not because I forgot. I remember these pains, so I'm listing them out, the sorrows and the pains. I remember them, but I went just as a part. It's just I had to take this journey. I didn't do it very willingly. It's not that I wanted to abandon country. So I think you could look at it as not as he forgetting the history, but he is accepting that the history happened, and he is in some sense a resolution to that history, his own returning home. So I don't think he really forgot about, you know, what would have happened. It's almost as if he's justifying that, yeah, I remember, even though I'm going to America, I know the history. Don't tell me about history. I know the history. But this is still the journey I have to take. Eventually, I come back to the sea. That's what I think. Any other takes on that?
Yes, I agree with your explanation of the poem, especially the fact that you would have included the historical aspect of it, wherein the persona for me is really reflecting on colonization and the whole slavery and so forth. And since the poet is Barbadian, this poem was written in the time when you know, a lot of immigration was taking place. The persons were leaving the Caribbean to find or seek the American dream, so to speak. So I would have understood the journey. What I'm listening to you keenly, but I'm still not sure if he returned home, even though you would have done an excellent job in substantiating your points. I'm still, because he says, but today I recaptured the islands. So I'm wondering if it is just a mere reminiscing. He's still in the north, but I'm wondering if the persona is just reminiscing on what obtained in
I'll
the
give
south.
you, sorry if I'm interrupting. I'll give you just 2 or 3 like concrete pieces of evidence that I think suggest strongly that he did return home. All right. So let's look at the 1, 2, 3 stanza 5. They remember us just as we left them. This seems to me as if the speaker is returning home, and the nature, the country, the everything that he left remembers him as he was 30 years ago when he was here. So we're seeing that he's being received. They remember us just as we left them. And then we see the fisherman is the only other person actually mentioned in the poem. There's no other person explicitly mentioned. We see the fisherman standing up saying, yo, welcome back, he's Halloween. And then we see the nature itself saying, welcome home, the gulls, the starfish, the limitless morning. So you could argue that the recollection, the recapturing is just nostalgia. But I think, this is just my view. I think he really did return home, and he returned home to a beautiful reception. That's what I think.
Or can it be that we combine these two ideas, right? Like he is making his journey home, and in this process of making his journey, he is reminiscing on where he comes from, his homeland. And the reason I say that is because of the last two lines: and gulls, white sails slanted seaward, fly into the limitless morning before us. So like he's on this journey, he's going and he's recollecting everything that has transpired, maybe in his life, but also the wonders that he had left behind. And so he's kind of immersing himself. And this experience for me is kind of somewhat real, because where I live and my family, they live far away. And so I remember as a kid going and visiting them. I would really reminisce on the things that I did when I was once there, and what I'm going to do again when I get there. So I think maybe combining these two ideas would really kind of bring this poem together.
I am thinking. Can I share here?
Of course.
I am thinking that the journey is completed. The journey that he has returned. And I want to add what the gentleman just said about the nostalgia that, there is still, so he's reminiscing, yes, but I think that he is there. I want to agree that he has already made it, returned home. He's actually there right now, but still, the as he said, but today I recaptured the island. So I was there before. Now it's like, it's like you're seeing it all for the first time. So there's that reminiscing, yes, but I am there. I go back home, but I'm still remembering, and I'm still, thinking about all the times that I had and all the things that we did, and how the nature is so beautiful and all that, but I am there, but I'm reminiscing still. I don't think that he is on his way. Even that line, and girls, white sail, that was quoted, I feel that is not strong evidence that he's on his way. But I'm at the beach, and the white girls, they are there flying, limitless, into the limitless morning before us. So I'm there walking on the beach, and I'm experiencing all these things. I have returned, but yet still, I am still, reminiscent of, and reminiscing on all these things that just as it was now, just what I enjoyed years ago. And that, to me, that there sums it up. So I agree with the merging of the ideas, but not that he's still on the journey. He has returned home.
Do you have a response? Okay, come in. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think
Oh.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, if I may say something. In terms of the word recapture, now I'm thinking recapture has to do with the mind, reminiscing, and so on. So then my question is, if you are there, why just sit down and reminisce? Why not just relive the life that you had? Go to the beach, see the fishermen, and so on. So in my estimation, he has not returned. He's still there, and he's thinking, he's homesick, as somebody said earlier. And in terms of the river and the oceans, I'm thinking, looking in terms of the source and the mouth, and we know that in comparison, he speaks of the rivers in the north and the seas or the oceans in the south, which is in Barbados, where this person is from. And so the river flows into the ocean, and we see the connection there. Now, if we're talking of slavery, Barbados was one of the places where you had a number of plantation, hence the name Little Britain, as it is called today. So I really believe that he did not return based on the theme, one of the themes of this poem, nostalgia. I think he's homesick and he's still in the north, just wanting to probably go home and just remembering his childhood.
I'm inclined to believe that too, because there's a Volta when he says, which suggests that there's a change in decision. But today I would join you. I would. He didn't say I have. He says I would join you. So I believe that the mood of nostalgia is pervading this poem, and traveling the river and so forth. For me, I don't think he's back yet, but he has all intentions based on his memories and so forth to return home. That's what I'm getting from it. But the idea has been presented that we could merge both ideas. But I think for me, the whole idea of reminiscing and nostalgia really supersedes that of the persona returning home or is at home.
Those are some very interesting insights. It's really interesting to see teachers, kind of justify their points of view. And this is one of the main points of contention. It's the main point of contention in this poem. Did the speaker return? Is he just thinking of returning home? When it says, but today I join you, traveling river, I believe he's just saying, I'm speaking of my journey, but no, I'm going to put my journey in the context of the historical journey. In that sense, he's joining the river. So the ancestors had their journey of being pulled to the north, into the north. He's joining them in the sense that, my journey is encapsulated by your journey. But, there are so many ways in which we can look at it. And I think both sides have evidence enough to support. We can say he's just thinking of returning home because nostalgia it permeates the whole poem. But that last stanza, I think, the last two stanzas might also strongly suggest that he's home being received. And Gian mentioned a very poignant point in the last line, in the second to last line. The sails are slanted seaward. This could have two meanings, at least two meanings. They could be going toward the sea, which would mean he's not yet home, or he could be at the beach at home and the sails are above the sea. Slanted seaward, the sails are tilted. So they're not flying straight. They're not parallel to the sea, but they're slanted, just like gulls would normally fly. So based on how you want to position your interpretation, you can wrap the poem around it either way. And it should be easy to justify, either point of view.
I think something very interesting came up, and this is where for our students here, and especially the area that I teach and where I teach, even though Belize is very much associated with Caribbean, the culture is not so much Caribbean because of the strong Hispanic influence, right? So someone mentioned the idea about or brought up the historical context, right? And I think this is important. And for this particular poem, I think knowing, the time period and what was happening during that time, or also knowing the geography and location of, where the poet is from, kind of makes sense, and it helps, right, with I think the interpretation of the poem itself. So just something to note there.
As we look at South, and as we look at it is the constant image of your face, as we look at that Guyanese poem, This is the Dark Time, My Love, we notice that understanding the context in which the poem is written can provide a lot of insight into what might otherwise be a very cryptic poem. But we have to caution students to balance knowing the context of the poem and staying within the poem. So for this point, we're taking into consideration that the speaker is Barbadian, and we're taking into consideration, historical happenings. At the same time, students must be able to justify everything within the lines of the poem. They can't go into a history book and say, well, on page 57 it said XYZ. So while having a knowledge of the history of the context is good, if you can't justify with the words, you are going to be in trouble. So one of the poems I wished we could have gotten to today, we'll have to have subsequent meetings, is "It is the constant image of your face," because that is one of the poems where without the context, it is almost as if you're thrown in the abyss. What do I make of this? And do students write an essay basing it on the poet and the context, and leaving the poem? You can't do that. So how do we strike that balance within knowing the context but justifying everything in the text? Because I should be able to read South and any other poem and not care about the writer, not care about the context, and still come to a sensible conclusion. So we have to keep that in mind as well. I think we're on crunch time. Yes, okay, we have some final comments. Yes.
Give me a minute. Resource. I was not finished.
Okay, sorry about that.
Because I mentioned the last stanza, and I really wanted to touch on two things. Concretizing the whole idea of it is nostalgic and reminiscing more than going back home. The whole idea of starfish and seagulls, they're symbolic in the poem. Starfish really symbolizes new beginnings, rebirth, regeneration, and so forth. And you would have to have some form of knowledge of the starfish to know how it regenerates and gives new life and new birth. The seagull in the morning also signifies some form of rebirth and regeneration and new beginnings. So for me, when I was analyzing the poem, I took all of those symbols in mind and I considered why the persona would have used them. What was he trying to really say to us? Is he really at home, or does he have the intention of going home? And when I considered the language and the symbolic nature of the diction, I would have come to the conclusion that he has decided to go home, especially when you look at the crisis at the Volta and so forth.
These are gems, man. It's like, what you're saying really helps me as well here. I when I look at the last two lines now and I see this, right? I see this indirect metaphor, right? And gulls, and then there's that comma, right? And then it says white sails slanted seaward, comma, fly. So gulls are flying into the limitless morning, and the gulls are a metaphor in a way for the white sails. What the gulls are white, right? And so they're flying out to sea. So yeah, so just something to.
That's a sneaky metaphor that might have been snuck in there. I think I touched on that, differentiating the gulls from the sails in my analysis video. I'm not sure. My video on South is one of my longest videos. Obviously it's a complex poem, and sometimes it baffles me that 15-16-year-olds have to grasp these 20 of these poems and be able to comment deeply on devices and themes and so on, because even for us teachers, we have so many different opinions, and some lines can be quite cryptic if we're honest with ourselves. Anyhow, for today,
Totally agree with you, Adam.
Yeah.
I want to ask one question.
All right, I'll ask that might be the final question. Go ahead.
So I understand how starfish represents rebirth, because when you break the one of the, I don't want to say legs, but limbs, it grows back, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not getting the seagulls though. How does the seagull represent rebirth?
All right. When I was looking at it, I was looking at the starfish and the seagulls both. And based on my limited knowledge of starfish, I know it does. It regenerates. It does. It gives new life and so forth. The seagulls. I was just thinking about the seagulls and the symbol of it. When you look at it, there's always some form of hope, some form of regeneration with it, renewed vivacity and rebirth, because they're always at the very, you see them in the early hours of the morning, and morning for me represents some form of rebirth and rehope. And the seagulls, just looking at it, I was saying to myself that this man is just going, he has all intentions to go home. And in addition to that too, I would have looked at all of the literary, most of them, the ones that I could readily identify, because I agree that this poem is extremely complex and so forth. And I would have looked at the volt, I would have looked at the turning point, I would have taken into consideration the whole idea of the seagulls, the starfish, his journey, and so forth. And I just see a persona who has just decided that, listen, it is time for me to go home. This is just not working for me anymore. And the seagulls for me just represented all of that. Going home, embarking on a new journey.